Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Years ago, before I met my wife, I had met somebody in law school, and we started dating. And to be honest, within the first, probably within the first 3 months. I mean, it was fiery to start. It seemed great within the first 3 months. There were little signs, and I kind of dismissed them and just made excuses and dismissed them, and this went on for a long time. We ended up dating for about 4 years, 3 of it happy. And then I just pushed away from the relationship. And then ultimately, I think it was 3 or 4 months later, met my wife. And I tell people that was the relationship that kept me in Columbus long enough for me to meet my wife. So as horrible as it, looking back, it seemed, and I'm no prize, so I'm not going to say that she's not telling the same story right now in a different way. This person, but there was a lot of baggage that I carried from that relationship. And in fact, when I started dating my wife, I remember, things were going really well, and I kept waiting for the shoe to drop. I kept waiting for this new person who now I've been married to 30 years with 3 great kids. I kept waiting for this behavior to reveal itself. And I didn't date a whole lot in high school, so I didn't have a whole lot of experience, and it probably delayed my me proposing to my wife, just because I wanted to be sure, and I was not sure. So that's just a little bit of personal history for me. And what that has to do with the show today is I have a guest on here, Michelle Hill, and she's a book and publishing consultant. And that's not why I have her on here. She's an author herself, and her latest best-selling book is called, and this is not fiction, this is nonfiction. It's called The Heart Swindler: Reclaim Your Heart and Stop Falling for Liars, Losers, and Lunatics. And it educates women on relationship deception, including romance fraud, narcissistic abuse, and it contains stories from survivors. And she helps equip women with resources to reclaim their heart. And if you've been a fan of this program, and if you are, and I know many of you are, you listen in often, I often talk about the whole notion that God gave us one brain. He didn't give us a special compartment for business. So the things that happen to us in our personal lives also happen to us in our business lives, and vice versa. In other words, in the business world, you will run into liars and losers and lunatics, and you need to know how to survive those situations, how to come back. And so I thought Michelle would be a wonderful guest. Michelle, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Frank. I am so glad to be here and to dive into this subject, because it's fun, but it can be disturbing too.
Well, I guess that leads into, to the extent you would like to share your story as to how you became interested in this.
Yes, I became interested because I am a survivor, 2-time survivor of romance scams. I would say romance scams, narcissistic abuse. Yes, I have that personality type that just attracts them. And I know that about myself. And so I was coming out of a long-term marriage and 23 years, and I was just newly divorced in the early 2000s and thought I would go online, and went on a website, and the person, pretended that they were just so in love with me, like I was everything. And they will often, as we know, love bomb excessively. And I didn't know any better. I had been married since I was 20 years old. And so flew from another state and I was living in Southern California at the time. And so flew to another state and just seemed like it was a match made in heaven. And people around me, when I started talking about it, they said, "Ooh, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is." And it was.
Mm.
So eventually he put a whole bunch of things on my credit card, and for some reason or another, his wasn't working. I didn't know the signs. I didn't know anything. And so I let him do that. And for me, fortunately, it was only $2,500. The attorney he took before me was for $18,000. He's been married 5 times at this point. And, you know, I introduced him to somebody at work, and it was an Italian guy that was just very street savvy. He asked him a couple questions, and he said, I took the guy back to my condo, came back to work, and my coworker said, "There's something off. Go back home and ask him blah, blah, blah." So I went back home and did that, and he knew the gig was up and totally withdrew, wouldn't talk to me. In fact, was on my couch planning his next escapade on the phone. And so next day took him to the airport, and that was that. So that's the first one. That was for money. And then I had a more recent one for emotional manipulation, but that was just some men that are kind of, I say, titched in the brain, just want to see if another woman will say, "I love you" to them. That's all they're after.
Well, through my episode, having lots of conversations with my dad, who had recently gone through a divorce, and told, totally different circumstances, but he just, was very insightful. He told me, he said, there are just some people who are in love with being in love.
That's exactly it.
I didn't really understand what he meant, but it was like, okay, they just like the, they like the thrill of winning somebody over. That was it.
They love the chase. That's
Yep.
it.
And as soon as that happens, then the fangs come out, right? Then they're kind of pushing you away, and then they're pulling you back.
Exactly.
And very interesting topic. I mean, there are these people out there. I think there are these people out there in business, people who tell us things, for whatever reason, to get us to do business with them. Put a brave front together. I joke about it. What'd your person say? If it's too good to be true, it probably is. People tell these stories. I always ask people, I always ask myself, okay, why is this person, if they're so great, why are they talking to me? Because I'm not all that. Why are they on the phone with me? Right? Or why are they in Zoom call with me? Not that I'm down on myself, but it's like, if you make as much money or is doing as well as you are, why are you talking to me about something that's 4 figures, right? I mean, it's like, really? Come on. Somebody who tells me I make 7 figures, I don't believe it, because you start doing the math, and it's like, okay, to make 7 figures, you would have to work. You would have to charge over $300 an hour and bill 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's how the math works out. And it's just, short of having a whole business enterprise where other people are working for you, it's not going to happen. It's just not. People will insist, no. It's like, I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
That's thrown around a lot today. A lot of podcasts, a lot of people are saying, I make, consistently 6 figures a month or 7 figures a year. And you hear it all the time. So you think, as a business person, man, I must be doing something wrong, because I'm not making a fraction of that, yet I'm working my tail off. And you just have to read between the lines. You have to just see what they're all about. And we do that through asking questions. And that's what I've learned is just ask questions. Not that they're going to be honest about the answers, but you have to really dig into who they are as a person.
Yeah. No, it's well, I tell people I make 7 figures, but I count the decimal points. That's um yeah, so anyhow, there are bad people out there. Let's talk about healing from this and coming back. You know, I think to a degree, forgiveness is a big piece of it, and because resentment doesn't really do anything. So I'll let you talk about what you've talked about in your book. Again, the name of the book is The Heart Swindler: Reclaim Your Heart and Stop Falling for Liars, Losers, and Lunatics. So yeah, what advice do you give people, or maybe the starting point is how do you spot it? And if you don't spot it soon enough, then what do you do?
Exactly. Well, I think for business, and one point I want to make too is that when you are a survivor, and I don't like to say or use the word victim, but when you are a survivor of any kind of scam,
Mm-hmm.
you are going to have people, family especially, friends, close friends, tell you you're stupid, tell you how could you have missed that.
Yeah.
And I bring out a point in the book about Bernie Madoff and all the thousands of people he ripped off that were intelligent,
Yeah.
articulate people that were just believe the smoke and mirrors, and they didn't see any signs. They weren't looking for any signs. So that's the first thing, is to just know that you are going to be verbally diminished by people around you. But the people that are targeting you to take advantage of you, they will, and this happens in business and personal, they will love bomb you. That looks different. Somebody in business might say, oh, if you give me $1,000, I will turn that into 10
Yeah.
within 30 days. That's kind of a love bombing of in the business world, the promises, huge promises. In the personal world, of course, they're going to tell you you're beautiful, you're so smart. I've been looking for a woman or a man like you all my life. It's the verbal love bombing. If you're local, it might look like, whining and dining you, all that. They will make extravagant promises to you. Business people will do the same thing. They'll make extravagant promises to you.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you try to pin them down, they're not available.
Right.
They ghost you, or they give you very vague answers. So those are some of the signs, just a couple of the signs. They don't really want to know the people. This is just a deal for you. This is just a relationship. This is just for you. And they
Yeah.
don't want you to really talk about it, or anything like that. The main sign really is to something in your gut doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And the first time I was a survivor of the online scam, I didn't have that gut telling me. I didn't know anything. I didn't know what I didn't know. The one that happened to me in person, the earlier in 2023, was something from the very beginning was telling us something doesn't feel right. We'd go out to dinner, come back. That was a great time. It was a great meal, but something doesn't feel right. In business, it's the same thing. Something, yeah, this guy sounds really convincing. Madoff, he sounds really convincing. But did anybody say something doesn't feel right in my gut?
It's interesting. You're talking about this. I think about I'm a big football fan. I think about college football, and these kids are being recruited, and some of them, geez, he told me I would be starting. And I'm thinking to myself, well, how could you be so naive to think that you would be starting, when there's, you you don't have record numbers. The media is not talking about you. Those are all the signs. But I think what we do, and you're laughing, and you probably did this yourself, you ignore the warning signs. You ignore hey, I make 7 figures. Well, that's mathematically really not possible for a solo coach to make 7 figures. It's just not, well, I shouldn't say it's not. There might be somebody out there who's doing it, right? The Tony Robbins type. But the person who's been doing it 6 months, it's just not possible.
That's so true. And we do. You made a great analogy. I love football as well. And, yes, we're going to put you're going to run out with the team. You're going to be starting, all that. So there's a lot of empty promises in that world because I work in that world with books and everything. But when I've looked at, for the personal side, when I've looked at very, and I'm trying to be kind here, very robust, very uncomely looking women who are kind of huge, and this young, fit 30-year-old is wooing you. That's that same naivety.
Yeah.
It's just there. Yeah, but he says he loves me. Yeah, but, and you get a bad case of the yeah, buts. And it's exactly what you said. You don't want to look at it because you're in the euphoria of somebody is courting you. Personally, in sports and in business, they're promising you something and you want it to happen so bad that you do ignore.
Yeah, well, I think all humans are subject to being deluded. In the example I talk about Bernie Madoff, in that they've interviewed Bernie Madoff, and he, to this day, does not feel like he's done anything wrong. I mean, in his heart of hearts, I just did a lot of good, and, rivals or whatever, they were coming after me, and he doesn't see it. And so that's a form of delusion, the different spectrum. But there are people who were victims of Bernie, or victims of heart swindlers, that they saw the signs. The signs were there. They just compartmentalized them or dismissed them, explained them away, ignored them, But for the 2 times he was crappy to me, it's been wonderful, kinds of things.
No, that's very true. Very, very true. You just ignore the signs until they become so loud that you can't. Like, what's that? The catfish program.
Yeah.
I watch a lot of those, and it's just when they provide proof to the person, look at here. And then the person comes to grips with that. Or the Netflix movie Tinder Swindler. These were young jet setter women that were survivors, victims, really, of the Tinder Swindler. And the one thing I want to point out too is that in the personal realm, if you give money to somebody, you have to pay that back. These guys, or the women, are rarely jailed. They rarely get caught, and you're on the hook because you willingly gave them that money. Yeah. And that's one thing I really want to stress is don't give money, no matter what someone says. Their daughter is sick in, Afghanistan or in Europe somewhere. No, real people step up to the plate. They don't ask for assistance from U.S. people. Yeah,
no. How do you come back from this? I mean, we've talked about, get real with yourself, listen to what other people are telling you. But you've been burned. But people listening have been burned, whether it's personally or professionally. How do you come back? Because you can basically slink into a shell, and that's probably a worse fate. Again, personally and professionally.
Yes, you have to grieve it like a death or a loss. It was a loss. It's a loss of hope. You might have lost a whole bunch of money, but you lost hope in that thing was real.
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing, is just sitting in the mud for a moment and just acknowledging it, realizing it, that it did happen to you. And you're going to feel, you don't need anybody to tell you, you feel stupid, because you do. You feel duped. You feel naive on steroids. Not even naive. You feel just duped. And so you sit in that for a moment. But then after that, the crucial thing is what we talked about previously, is forgiveness. You cannot hold on to it. And I've heard that, and I hope I get this right, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yes,
And so,
Nelson Mandela said something along those lines. Yeah.
yes. So you have to forgive the other person for doing that to you. Yes, it was unjust. There's a lot of injustice in the world, but we can't carry that around. When you're healing from it, you give yourself the same self-care that you would give to a friend, a best friend. If a best friend came to you, you wouldn't say, "Oh, you stupid jerk, you know," and just pound them verbally. You would give them compassion and empathy and help them, bring them I don't know, I'm talking about food, but bring them a pint of Ben and Jerry's, or bring them flowers, or
Right.
something that would be meaningful for them. Send them a card. Do that for yourself. So, just show yourself some love, some care, some compassion. Another thing is, stop blaming yourself. Just like Bernie Madoff, it's not your fault.
Yeah.
You didn't see what you didn't see. You
Well,
didn't
yeah.
know.
Well, the Bernie Madoff thing is a case study unto itself, because you being duped, it's one-on-one, so you don't really have anything to compare it to, unless you were part of 60 sorority sisters that all got duped by the same guy. And then
Yes.
I'd have to wonder about you. But with the Bernie Madoff thing, people were getting duped, but they were being lured to be duped by very sophisticated people that could have and should have known better. And so, I get why they ignored warning signs, if there were warning signs.
Yes, and people want to get rich quickly, and they want a good return for their money. So on that side, yeah, you ignore the warning signs, but you can't blame yourself for not knowing. You've been duped by a professional. They're skilled, they're polished. And the same way with the heart swindler, when these women are online, and men, I don't want to rule out men because it happens to them every day too,
Sure.
is that there's professional tag teams, a lot in Nigeria, a lot in Russia. Those are the two main countries. And a tag team of 2 or 3 will work 24/7. So that woman thinks that that person is available for them all the time. And they will never use their name, rarely or never use the person's name. They will say honey, they'll give you a pet name, honey, babe, sweetie, sweetheart, because they're working so many at one time that they don't want to confuse the name, and then their gig is up.
Gotcha.
So that's a huge tip off. But they're professional. That's just what they do all day long, every day. They're polished. They have their game down. They know what to look for. They know what to say.
Yeah. The book's The Heart Swindler: Reclaim Your Heart and Stop Falling for Liars, Losers, and Lunatics. It's out there. Purchase it. She's going to make 30 cents every copy sold. I know how it works. But I mean, you're a book publisher and a consultant, and we can certainly touch on that. But with respect to the book, are you consulting with people? Do you have support groups, or just you wrote a book just to feel better about? And there's nothing wrong with that. But if someone's listening, are you available to help them? For well, hopefully for money. But so anyhow, go ahead.
Yes, I am. Thank you for asking that. I do have on my website, heartswindler.com, which I'm sure you'll put in the show notes.
Yep.
I do offer paid heart restoration conversations, which is a one-time 45-minute conversation. Sometimes a woman rather talk to another woman who's been through it rather than a therapist who just goes paint by number, do this, do this, do this, do this.
Right.
I can listen with empathy, and I can sit in the mud with them, but not stay in the mud. So yes, I have that. And then I also have ongoing gentle guidance sessions where if somebody needs a little more than one conversation, I can definitely have sessions, 2-3 months at a time, to where we meet weekly and you can share what's going on. I'm feeling angry this week. I can't function. Or I had a breakthrough this week and they need somebody to talk to. So yes, I have those both available on the Heart Swindler website.
Okay, great. And you're a book and publishing consultant working with athletes, business people, helping them get their books written, published. Correct?
Yeah.
You want to talk about that, if you would?
Yeah. Briefly, yes, I help sports and business professionals write, publish, and promote their books. And I've worked with former NFL athletes and NBA athletes and some other sports, sports agents,
Sure.
things like that. I love the sports world. And, that's just an area of passion for me. But I had to expand beyond that. So I will help almost anybody with a book. It has to align with my company values and things like that.
Sure. Okay.
Yes, I do. I love when people come to me and say, I have this crazy idea for a book. I just love that conversation. So yeah, that's what I do. And I've been doing that full time since 2015, and I've had my company since 2008.
Well, I appreciate you coming on today. This has been enlightening. You are a unique guest for me to have, so thank you.
Thank you, Frank. I really appreciate you having me.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.